tradition, no history, as a state project to project power, where thousands of migrant workers have died in the construction of these stadiums. It's been staged in a nation where homosexuality is illegal. Women are treated as second-class citizens, and there's a tainted aspect about how they got it in the first place. The stench of corruption all over the kingmakers of the FIFA Executive Committee at the time when the tournament was awarded in 2010. So, in terms of the football, out there, listeners, who's your idea of the winner? What are your predictions for the Golden Boot? Dark horses, your player of the finals? Get in touch. We'll give the best ones a shout out. And also, what did you make of the Republic of Ireland against Norway on Thursday night? A good crowd at the Aviva Stadium. Are you keeping the faith, or are you tearing your hair out when it comes to the national team? So, Johnny, I think, like most of us, I think we're kind of almost with trepidation about an event that really is a signpost for a lot of people's lives, that we all remember the first World Cup we watched, and we're going into a World Cup in November, December, and it should not be in Qatar. We all know that. But I wonder, within a week's time, will we all be sucked into it? And will we have various thoughts in our mind that we shouldn't be watching this, but we will?
Yeah, like, it's not... Whether you watch it or not is neither here nor there, really. It's happening. It's not going to make any real change to the Qatari regime or anything like that, so just watch it away, and it doesn't make any odds. The horse is bolted here in this utterly absurd World Cup, where reportedly 200 billion has been spent on, a football tournament that isn't going to leave any legacy whatsoever in a country that has a lot of money, a lot of migrants making up most of the population. And if you were to bring a World Cup to the Middle East, why you would bring it to a tiny country, essentially a World Cup run in a city, it's not going to leave any legacy. I'm kind of disgusted the more it goes on, JD, and obviously you have to give a cursory sort of account of who you think might do well, and the football sort of narratives in this are actually many. They're compelling. Messi, could he finally win the World Cup? Could England put their woes behind them? Kylian Mbappe, Ronaldo, there's an awful lot going on, but it's a sideshow, and it's despicable, really. Like, when you see FIFA basically bleeding their kind of they're bleeding any sense that you have in their decency dry even further as the contest nears. And funnily enough, I got a text there from a friend in Iran today who texted me what appears to be a dress code kind of placard in Qatar as to how you should dress going into the stadium, which will be interesting, because I see there being potential protests during the games, that there's potentially climate protests, stuff like that, because I think it's such a great stage to make a protest. And the thing about the beer is sort of a sideshow. I find the whole World Cup, I find it quite despicable. And I suppose the other night I saw the first leg of the documentary on Italia 90, which is on, I think, Sky Documentaries.
I watched that, yeah.
So, I'm now in my 40s, and as you get older, you're like, you can never really recapture that magic of Italia 90, what it was as a 7-year-old me. But to see Toto Scalacci look so fresh, and to see him, almost like play the goals with his dad as happened in 1990, and his dad looked really fresh, kind of gave me so much life that has been sucked out of me with the thought of this World Cup.
Dan, you're in Malta ahead of the Republic of Ireland's game tomorrow night. Gianni Infantino, the FIFA president, gave quite a bizarre press conference today.
Yeah, well, they're not really succeeding in taking the attention off themselves, and like that. I mean, listen, that's the way it should be in the context of this hosting. Like, the story of the tournament is this. It's the backdrop. It's where it's taking place. I don't know, like, what was going on with that speech. I know a lot of people probably haven't seen the full speech. They've only sort of picked out the best bits and the highlights and the clips. But if it was viewed in some way as an attempt to like diffuse sort of the storm, around their staging of the tournament in Qatar, it hasn't succeeded. Like, this is the problem. Like, a lot of people probably watched, various documentaries and stuff about like FIFA and their abuse of power and how the competition ended up there. And the whole overriding theme is very much like an organisation like that runs football, that at the top end of it is out of touch with reality. And that clip, that speech earlier, and it's sort of almost trying to equate, his childhood plight with his sort of, with his red hair, with that of like the serious stuff we're speaking about here. I mean, like, it's absurd, and like even to sort of like, you can sort of poke fun at the absurdity of it, but obviously it's sort of, there's a serious point behind the whole thing. And like, this is, Infantino is supposed to represent in some ways, or likes to maybe position himself in some ways as like some kind of reformer or some kind of face of a new FIFA, when actually people just look at that and go, it's the same old, same old.
Yeah, he's accused the West of hypocrisy and talked about the Europeans maybe apologising for what they've been doing for the last 3,000 years around the world, and should be apologising for the next 3,000 years before giving moral lessons.
See, there is you can engage a bit in whataboutery in the sense that, like, Qatar.
This was a masterclass in it.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it's actually it's partridge stuff how far he went with this, and you can engage in, like, homosexuality was illegal in Ireland until not that long ago. So, like, and we weren't a perfect country either, and you can engage in Qatar isn't the worst regime in the Middle East by any means. But when you have the England players, like, clearly really struggling in training with the heat, and you think of migrant workers working, like, say 14-hour days in the summer heat in horrible conditions to make these stadia and they, if they die, they're forgotten about, JD, to make stadia for this stupid tournament that shouldn't be taking place in a country for which you will have no legacy, that seemingly cost 200 billion. What do they have, like 400,000 locals actually living in Qatar, some of them singing like football's coming home like they've never heard the song before? Not having it.
Yeah, like, it's nothing wrong with it going to the Arab world. I mean, that it could be a good thing. Of Morocco and Algeria would be, places where you could have had the World Cup in Morocco bid so many times, but it's for the wrong country, for the wrong reasons, with the stench of money all over it. David, you're a retired footballer. Can you separate all of this despicability from the actual football?
I don't think you can. It's just, you look at the conditions those workers that Johnny's speaking about have worked in, and they still are working in. Even there was videos circulating on social media of, pavements not completed that looked like dangerous. You just look at the whole concept, even the way they treat, like, the LBGT, community, whatever that may be, like, how they treat them. The whole thing is just a mess. And then, like, to have the World Cup in November, December, like, I understand the position that the players are in. Like, look, if I was still playing and Ireland qualified, you'd be super excited to go and play in a World Cup. If Ireland went there, I'd be supporting them. Yes, these facts would still be there, and it still would be a problem. And the whole thing is wrong. It just shows, like you spoke with the documentary that FIFA have done. I watched that, like, and I tweeted about it, and people kind of said, "Oh, well, what did you think was going on?" It was going on for so long that so many people thought something was wrong, but they never knew. And then you kind of find out the extent of what was going on. Like, the whole thing of, like, Michel Platini getting called in by the French president, because I think it was the Qatari king's son was in the room or something. And then the Qataris buy Paris Saint-Germain, they sell them firefighters and all this. Like, the whole thing is just a mess. But, like, the worst part about it is, once the football kicks off, we're going to watch the football. And to a certain extent, a lot of these issues will be pushed to the side because people will get behind the football and watch the football.
There's such a disconnect, Dan, isn't there, between what football should represent and the joy that it brings to humanity and the ugliness of FIFA. And to be honest, I'm so depressed about it because I can just see Saudi Arabia winning that bid now for 2030.
Do you think? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I
don't know. Like, I suppose, yeah, some of the Infantino stuff, like, I mean, attacking Europe, and as has been pointed out, like, there's valid points contained within it, but it's also, I mean, he's not actually, I'd say it's for votes, except doesn't actually have anyone up against him. But, like, the whole growth of the super FIFA president has been, to some degree, like, sort of a parish pump approach to, like, FIFA politics, in the sense that, they don't care about us in Europe. And they sort of bring it around the world, and they say things that would play well for them in that sphere, and retain their sort of retain their status as FIFA for all. Even though we know that's not going to be the case. But I know what you're saying about the Saudi stuff. I don't know. I know that this never underestimate the way a FIFA bidding process can go, and I know they've changed the structure now. It's not an executive committee; it's sort of everyone has a vote. But another way of looking at this, like, Qatar, it's a sort of a show of strength for them to win the hosting. But everyone in the world now, or like a large portion of people in the world, are probably talking about situations in Qatar they weren't aware of previously. Like, it's actually shone a light on how things operate there. And like people talk about sports washing as something that improves a reputation of a place. In some ways, it's put it on the map for the wrong reasons. And now, will that have any impact in terms of like decisions that are made around future tournaments? Like, would FIFA really welcome a Saudi World Cup where the build-up is again dominated by this? Look, maybe they'll just brazen it out, and maybe they would. But I wouldn't be 100% convinced that it would go that way.
Yeah, well, I hope you're right. 53106, Qatar is going to win the World Cup. Who else? They've defied FIFA in the no beer ban. It's going to be a passing interest, says Kevin and Donegal. Time to watch more MLS, says Kevin. The beer ban really just seems quite inconsequential, actually. But it's really, it's not about the beer ban. It's about that they change it 2 days out.
Yeah, it is. There is a kind of a fire festival theme to some of it, and some of the images you see of the fan area, it sounds like they've really rushed this to get it in, and they're kind of making last-ditch decisions that maybe reflect that they're either not entirely ready or they have to be true to the customs of the country. And this is a conservative country. It's they do not have people coming over, hammering Budweiser into them at a football game. And I don't know how the power is going to work over there in terms of the local police. And we saw during the week, media being accosted who were basically just doing their job at a roundabout or whatever. They're just not used to this. Dan does make a good point. It has shone a light on Qatar in the sense that they probably didn't want, but they've essentially spent 200 billion of cash that they've basically made from selling oil, thereby destroying the planet and producing a World Cup that will have no legacy whatsoever.
It's a great argument, isn't it, for energy independence?
It is, shady. But you know what I was thinking, and the texter mentioned the MLS. Like, we have that image of John Aldridge, who of course scored that goal in Malta all those years ago as Ireland play Malta tomorrow. John Aldridge fighting on the pitch when we played Mexico, and the heat was an issue over there. But the legacy of that World Cup was that soccer really took off in the States, and it was basically played in stadia that already existed. Like, it was a perfect World Cup in so many ways. Look at this one.
Yeah, and then the next tournament will be the States. So yeah, you're speaking of Malta. Dan, you're in Malta. This is it's as low key as it can get probably for the Republic of Ireland, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the big one. It's the big one of the weekend, John. I'm just sitting here waiting for the press conferences are going to start soon enough. So okay. I'll be heading off, but not quite soon enough. I wouldn't say the anticipation is building around Malta, but it is strange. I suppose it's in some ways these friendlies are like reflective of how modern football is fueled as well too. There was a certain degree of pressure on nations to try and play 2 games in this window. It's all sort of pretty much linked with sort of centralized TV rights deals and various commitments and games you need to play. And that's why you're seeing these friendlies sandwiched in. Like the FAI would always have been keen to play a game in Dublin, and obviously Norway wasn't the game they were hoping for in the sense of Haaland being absent. But the idea of a second game there was sort of a degree of pressure that you should do it. And even like Stephen Kenny the other night, you're speaking in realistic terms, like what are you really going to gain from playing Malta? But I suppose the attitude is it's better than nothing. It's better to play a game and get a chance to give players minutes than not. But in terms of what you actually expect from the game, it's unclear. We'll probably learn a little bit more now. But we saw Evan Ferguson thrown in for a couple of minutes on Thursday, and maybe there might be more minutes for fringe players. But in terms of taking some big meaning from it, in terms of sort of taking the lessons from Malta into the new year, you wouldn't be so sure. I suppose there have been times in the last year. Think of Armenia, for example, where Ireland have struggled to break down inferior sides, away from home. So maybe in some ways you can look at that and see can you learn some kind of lesson in some way. But beyond that, it's hard to really place any great importance. I mean, just the pure fact that it's an international friendly taking place a few hours after the beginning of the World Cup, it sort of drives home that you're very much
off Broadway. Off Broadway.
Yeah, I was literally just saying that, John.
I know.
Okay.
I know he's in Malta, but Dan sounds like he's kind of like he's really cushioned his voice today. He's talking quite low, as if he's preparing for Qatar, and he doesn't want to speak too loud in case somebody overhears him giving out about the regime over there.
Well, no, it's a more library feel today, Johnny. But it
looks like you're in a courtroom or something.
Yeah, well, I mean,
The course of Stephen Kenny.
let's hope that's not important of things to come. Well, anyway.
We've gotten the bad jokes out of the way anyway.
Well, I was going to say, with the Middle Eastern team, I'm surprised not playing Oman, but that was the joke I had.
I got to the bottom of that. David Meyler's got 5 caps against him. I'd say. So don't be shagging him off.
I've got a few. Yeah. I think I've got 2.
Dan, just from the other night, what were the fans? What was the fans' reaction to the Norway, if there was a reaction to the defeat?
I don't know. I mean, like I'm sure as ever, like the text lines will represent.
I think they've all taken a day off, to be honest.
They'll represent the views of the middle ground. Indifference was the primary feeling, I think, in the first half. It was like a game played out to the hum of discussion, and that was sort of that was the atmosphere. A bit of football broke out in the second half. Ireland lost the game. It was a bit deflating, I suppose, in the context of some of the chat, from Stephen Kenny across the year. Well, let's make Dublin a fortress. Has Dublin ever really been a fortress for home international friendlies in November? I'm not so sure. But you would have been hoping for more. I think, Ireland crowds have been very good this year in general. There was over 40,000 at the Armenia game. In saying that, I'm sure a lot of people got tickets for Thursday with Haaland in mind, and there was a sense of disappointment there. And you're sort of thinking, Kenny spoke beforehand about doing these supporters justice, giving them a bit of a show, and then you serve up like a pretty grim opening half. But I mean, look, David's there. He can talk more about the mentality of players when it comes to these type of friendlies relative to competitive games. I know every player in a press conference will come out and say every game for your country is important, and every game, matters. And I totally believe that they feel that way, but it's hard to sort of manufacture intensity. And we all know that when France come to town in March, it's going to be a full house. It'll be a different game. And I don't know how you can apply too much from Thursday to that. There's little things. I mean, he's not experimenting dramatically. He looks pretty set on the system now. And it was 74 minutes till he met a sub. So there's clearly an element of this is the way it's going to be. But it wasn't a great execution of that on Thursday.
Dan, we'll let you go for the moment and hope to have you back after the press conference and get your predictions for the World Cup in Qatar. David, can we do better than we are at the moment? Like, we conceded both goals to set pieces the other night. Maybe the second one was unfortunate for Nathan Collins, but are we better than this?
Of course we can do better. I think if you look back on any Irish team going over the years, we could have always done better. I think the frustrating thing from the other night was, now I didn't see the full game, I saw extended kind of parts of it and I saw clips after. Like, we're building up, our build-up, playing up from the back is improving all the time. I do feel that. I think players are getting more familiar with the way Stephen wants to build out. I think the players he's playing are more suitable to the system. Obviously Josh Cullen is a massive part of that. But I think it's once we engage into the opponent's half, that's where, once we enter that kind of final third area, that's where our breakdown is. Now, the other night he had Alan Brown and Jason Malumbi ahead. Instead of playing as 2 number 8s, they kind of played as 10s. They were too high up. They limited the space with Callum Robinson and Michael Obafemi. There was nowhere for them to go. Now, that caused us a problem where, they were deep. Norway, they were compact. There was no spaces. And the players almost ran out of ideas.
Yeah, we just lost David for the moment there. Johnny, I'm just kind of thinking to myself, there are legitimate issues with football in the country, the lack of an industry here, the lack of top quality international players that play at the Premier League level. But it just seems to be, there's a momentum problem with the Irish team at the moment. We just can't get momentum. And maybe friendlies don't matter in that regard, but...
Yeah, Norway are a decent side. I thought Odegaard was, just showed his absolute class at times, and they sort of turned up for the game, and it should have probably been a draw. Like, let's be honest, we conceded from 2 set pieces. I thought the first one, you have nobody on either post, but it's not that well defended, I think. And Stephen Kenny obviously to take questions about it, but I know what you're saying, JD. It's kind of, you're looking at Stephen Kenny trying to change like the way we played for the guts of 30 years, and he's trying to change it. It is taking time, as David says. I thought our pass now at the back was better, but we still have an issue. If it breaks down, we look so vulnerable, I think, and I still think midfield is an issue. Malumbi looks like, at times he makes good tackles, but he should have been booked twice the other night. He looks like he's kind of running around the place at times. Josh Cullen is a key player for us, but he's playing the championship. Alan Brown got the goal. That's where we're at, though. 3 championship players, and I do wonder about the system at times. I think it's probably the system that maybe suits the players we have best, but at times I think we just look so open when we lose the ball. I don't know what you think, but Stephen Kenny used to be a 4-5-1 man. It's probably my favourite system in football. Three at the back. I still do wonder at times. There was actually a moment in the 33rd minute, I was just looking back today, where we lost the ball in midfield. There was really nothing on, and within a second Doherty's totally out of position, and we've this massive hole in the left hand side, and I can't remember the Norway player, but he should have done way better through on goal. And it's just an example. When we lose the ball, we seem to be vulnerable almost straight away.
David Meyler's back. David, do you want to finish your point there?
Sorry, the line dropped. No, but even just listen to Johnny there. But if you want to play a back 5, back 3, whatever way you want to call it, right? It's the same thing. Now the width comes from your wing backs. Now they inevitably have to be the ones that are going to create. Now I don't think the formation is the issue. Like the other night, we had success, we had joy, albeit like Callum would be the first to admit his end product wasn't good enough. He got into good areas. Matt, there's a lot more in the locker. We've certainly seen Matt, like that position is made for Matt. We've seen that time after time with Wolves over the years. It suits him. Like there is part of what Dan says, the mentality. Now, I can't speak on behalf of each player, but I know the feeling of going into those games when you look at you factor in we're not going to the World Cup, so you're playing these friendlies. A lot of their teammates who aren't playing internationals will have gone on holidays with their families because clubs will have breaks. Now, other clubs are in training, but they'll have a break after. There will be that little bit. Now, there will be, don't get me wrong, a lot that will be care, an awful lot that will want to play those games for Ireland, but there will be a little bit of doubt in a few. Like on the game, I was speaking about like our 2 midfielders, like Malumbi and Alan Brown. At times they were too high, they were crowding the spaces. Now, like if you're going to play that way in a dominating, a possession-based kind of football, you have to be expansive. You have to make the pitch as big as possible. And if you do turn over possession, you are going to leave yourself vulnerable. Now, the difference in playing in a friendly or a qualifier is there's that little bit, in a qualifier, you'd expect players to be sprinting and, bursting a gut to get back into position. And at times, I do agree with you, we are wide open. But if you want to play that way where you're dominating and you pin teams into their own half, then you need your wing backs high, pushed on. You need your outside centre half split wide. You need your 8s pushed up, and you need your 9 and 10 obviously offering a thread in behind or to feet. But you're going to have to be expansive. Like the frustrating thing for me was once we kind of got towards the final third, we're crying out for that creative player. Now we've been crying out for that player for a long time. Like the best example was probably Wes Hoolin for a long time. He had that ability to see a pass and be able to pull it off. We don't have that at the moment. Like that's the part. We're getting into good areas, but we do sustain attacks well. We do pick up second balls. We do retain, but at the same time, you want to see more efforts. You want to see more chances.
53106. Once we engage, come on, football is a bad engagement. 4 wins in 25 matches, and still the excuse is it's getting tiresome, says Michael. And also, a fan's view, a wasted opportunity to plan unproven players versus Norway. I think he says play. I think that's what he means. Exemplified by Hendrick coming on, plus a huge number of Irish players waving hands at each other. Something didn't work about the game plan. From David and Brea, an FAI season ticket holder, Kenny's last campaign is the sting in this tale.
I wouldn't worry about the Norway game. Like Callum O'Dowda played left wing back. You did front 2 who I'm not sure they've ever played together before. And I think I don't know what you think about this, David, but like it must not be easy for these players to develop this chemistry all of a sudden. When even you look at our 3 midfielders, like they're 3 players who are essentially playing at championship level, if they're getting games at all. And it's like it's not easy just to all of a sudden fit into a system. And then you've a new left wing back, you've a new strike partnership up front. It's for me, you can't expect miracles against a decent side.
No, to a certain extent, no, you can't. But okay, look, you can speak about players playing championship, but even the time we qualified for France in 2016, we had players playing in the championship, we had players playing in the Premier League. Now, I think that's that's a kind of a cheap excuse almost in a way, like, because players, these are good young players, and they're more than capable of playing at this level. Like, it's going to be like, don't get me wrong, once the next campaign starts, you got the French and the Dutch coming, that's total different opposition. You've got squads littered with Champions League players, which is a total different level. Like, you talk about chemistry, that's where, touching on Dan's point, that's where these friendlies do matter. Like, as Stephen said, it's better to have a game than not have a game, because it's more time for him to work with the players and keep drilling in, the information of what he wants and what he's trying to achieve. Now, you can talk about results, right? It is a results-driven business. I get that, and if this was a club level, then the manager would be under pressure, and I don't think Stephen would shy away from that. But at the same time, like, I've been in favour of Stephen since the start. Now, I've always harped on the point that I see a bigger picture. I'm trying to look ahead. Now, this qualifying campaign coming up that will start in March is huge for him. That's going to be inevitably the one that dictates whether or not he stays on longer. Like, there's almost a part of me feels that Stephen's doing a lot of the groundwork now, that even if, after this campaign, if Stephen were to move on, if the FAI were to make a decision, I feel the next person who would come in after him would reap the benefits of the work he has done. And like, you still got to allude, like it's just mad. Like, Evan Ferguson came on the other night, right? Like, I'm coaching with the Irish under-17s. Like, 3 years ago, I had Evan as a striker. Like, that kind of gives me an insight now of, like, all these young boys, and like, I speak to the coaches with the 17s, like the array of talent that's in the first team now they had, which makes me think, like, wow, like, these kids were there 5 years ago. Like, your Knights, your Malumbys, Darrow Shays, Andrew Amadamvelli, I hope I pronounced that correct, Adam Ida, Troy Parrott, Gavin Bazoon. Like, they all came through the 17s. Nathan Collins is another one, I can't forget him. But like, 4 or 5 years ago, they were playing under 17 football. Like, it's not like if this group were, all 26, 27, 28, then okay, you could have a lot of question marks, but they're still very young and they're still learning about international football. Like, it's going to take you the bones of, I'm going to say, probably 20, 25 caps to really get the gist of it. Or if you've been around it a long time, like, I have 26 caps, but if you look at it, like, my first cap came in 2012. Do you know what I mean? I was in and around it, and I was very fortunate because I had huge senior players like your Robbie Keane, Shay Given, John O'Shea, like, all those fellas. Now, I'm not saying, like, the lads of Seamus Coleman, James McLean, right, Jeff? They'll be great for the young lads, and I guarantee if you got any young lad, they'd say they'd be superb with them. We know the type of character Seamus is, but it's going to take time. They're still awfully young, and that's where I think, like, I'm looking at the big picture. If Stephen, like, is given time to work with these players, like, it might not be next qualifying campaign. It might be, the World Cup in 26. Like, and that's the sorry truth of it, because these lads are all, 20, 21, 22. I'm talking about, like, 3-4 years time when they're 25, 26, where they should be hitting their primes. Like, we're looking for an awful lot now. But I understand football is a results business. Look, I was a professional for a long time. I get that. But when Stephen took over, you had a lot of people who were all for him. You had people who were no from the offset. Now, some people have changed, and I get that. But, like, is it not better just to get behind your country and support them? You know what I mean?
Okay, David
There's
Meyler.
my rant.
No, it's fine. 53106, you want to react to what David's saying there. Just some sports news. A Plutar, the Cheltenham Gold Cup winner, pulled up in the Betfair Chase at Haydock, 2-1 on Rachel Blackmore. Maybe the horse made a mistake from the comments. It might have, but pulled up. That is a big shock in horse racing today. Protectorat, 15-2, has won the race for Dan Skelton and Harry Skelton in the colours, part owned by Alex Ferguson.
I was interviewed afterwards and looking very, very fresh. Looks like he could go straight back into management.
Well, there you go. Maybe he needs to. Just to give you some other updates, another shock coming from rugby. Georgia had beaten Wales in an international today by 13 points to 12. So that's a turn up for the books in Cardiff. Italy 21, South Africa 63, also full time. Turles Strand of Sligo into the Connacht Club football final. They beat St Mary's of Leitrim by 8 points to 6. And we also have John Ram leading the DP World Tour Championship with 1 round to go on 15 under par. But Rory McIlroy is lurking on 12 under. Constitution Hill, a non-runner in that Carl Hurdle at Ascot, which was won by Goshen at 6-5. And Midnight Run was the big winner of the big race today. 7-4 shot in the Craddockstown Novice Chase at Punchestown. Brian Cooper for trainer Joseph O'Brien. Off the ball Saturday, Football Saturday, back after the break with Dan McDonnell, Johnny Ward and David Meyler. Get your predictions in for the World Cup. Who's going to win it? 53106. Who will be the player of the tournament? And who's going to take the Golden Boot? Back after this. And welcome back to Off the Ball Saturday here on News Talk. John Duggan with you 3 to 5 this evening. This is Football Saturday. Remember, football and off the ball brought to you by Sky. Watch big games and the Women's Super League live on Sky Sports. You can text us 53106, tweet us at Off the Ball. We're streaming the conversation as well. Listen across the country on your radio on News Talk. Watch us on the digital and social channels for Off the Ball on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter and on the OTB Sports app. We're joined in studio by the broadcaster and journalist Johnny Ward, and on the line from Malta by Dan McDonnell of the Irish Independent and the former Republic of Ireland international David Meyler. 53106. Come on, lads. We're turning into Arsene Wenger with our football team. Pretty patterns and no cutting edge, says Connor. Another of our texters, far too many excuses for Stephen Kenny. Ireland are not improving under him. Another one, why play out from the back? I assume is to create space further up the pitch by drawing the opposition out. But what do we actually do with the space? Indeed, it seems to me that the vulnerability it creates at the back isn't being justified.
That's a fair point.
53106. Hi lads, I love football. I played it. I was a coach, finally a manager. I go to loads of local matches, but I will not be watching a single game of this dirty, tainted World Cup. Qatar is a despicable state. I'm totally against them hosting, says Paul in Kildare. And another one, we have the absurdity of the Western press against Qatar is laughable. Yes, there are issues on workers' rights, but to complain about the heat, etc. Anyone ever thought how cold it was for the Africans in the World Cup in Europe? This is all about the arrogant Western world thinking it's all about us. Respect folks whose culture is different from yours.
How cold it was for the Africans in Europe? Were we playing in like Vladivostok or what? Like, sorry, in the summer. I mean, I think the hypocrisy is a fair point, JD. I mean, we don't seem to have an issue with like a lot of our countries doing deals with Saudi Arabia, but we'll give out about the Qatari World Cup. Saudi Arabia is an even worse regime. So there is a lot of whataboutery, but I don't think we're playing World Cups in conditions such that the Africans like were unable to deal with it. I mean, let's be honest.
Dan McDonnell, the press conference I believe has been postponed or delayed, so you're back with us from Malta. On the football itself, Dan, who do you see as the likely winners out of this?
Let's get down to the real.
Let's get down to the real. We've talked about Qatar enough till we're blue in the face. So who do you see then, Dan, as the main contenders? Brazil, Argentina, France. Are they in your top three?
Are they your top three, John? I think you've put them. I think that's what you've done there. Listen, we would have obviously we would have had a pull out on it in the paper today, and you would have given your predictions, and I have gone for Brazil within that. Not necessarily with huge conviction. Like there's no one outstanding European team. Like if you think about it, like the European champions didn't qualify. England were the finalists, and their form has gone off a cliff a little bit. France got relegated. Like France, probably the best squad, albeit with a couple of injuries. They've got relegated in the Nations League. Spain getting better, but is it too soon? So it's sort of there seems to be no outstanding team amongst them, and that's possibly why Brazil and Argentina look so attractive. But it's also because they've got very good squads. I mean, they have sort of long. Argentina have that long unbeaten record. Brazil have a pretty solid one as well. Now, I know that the issue with Brazil, I think Tim Vickery's made that point. They were desperate to try and play games against teams in Europe and haven't been able to arrange them. COVID has complicated that. So in terms of the form guide, I think it was Joe who said it during the week, it's like an old school Cheltenham where you've got like the Irish form and the English form. You've got the South American form and the European form, and you're waiting to see how relevant it is. But I think Brazil, you look at the squad that they have, you look at the options they have, they seem to have a couple of different ways to adapt and play. You wouldn't be concerned about the conditions if it does become grueling. And like even you look through their squad and some of the options they have, Martinelli, Rodrigo, Anthony, more maybe fringe players in some instances who don't even have 10 caps yet, like Guimaraes in Newcastle, and that sort of shines a light on the depth of the options that they have. And clearly there seems to be that debate over how attacking are they going to be. Will they need to rein it in? And they do have a tough group, they have a tough route. But maybe that's something that sort of sharpens them up. Like they have to play Serbia, Switzerland in the group stage, potentially even a tricky round of 16 with Uruguay or Portugal. But it might just be off a limited preparation. They might have all the attributes just to get it done. But it's not. I'm not sort of there's always an element of guesswork with this. I mean, we watch a certain amount of international football, but not in such a way that you have a really definitive, strong view on the hierarchy. It's almost like the group stages helps to establish that.
8-7, Argentina lead Scotland in the rugby at Murrayfield. Who's going to be the Willie Mullins then of this World Cup, I suppose is the question. Dan, who do you see as the dark horses, maybe the teams that could outperform their expectations?
Yeah, I mean, it seems to be a view that Uruguay could go well. Again, they have a little bit of the old guard in their squad. Suarez, Cavani, Diego Godin, but they have sort of younger players. I mean, Valverde, Darwin Núñez, and they're in a side of the draw that if they can win their group, you can see them plotting a path. I think Denmark could go well. Again, are they even dark horses anymore? I think we see them that way because of a sort of traditional perception of them. But if they were, and we also played them every 3 months. But they're in the semi-finals of the last Euros on merit, despite having lost their best player and obviously well-documented reasons. So they've beaten France in the Nations League this year, and they're in the group with France. If they can somehow finish top in that group, the path opens up for them. So they'd be a couple, but I'm not even sure they really dark horses in the sense of like they're probably in the top 10 teams in the tournament. I don't know if anyone else can pluck out someone who's going to completely surprise us. I think a lot of people seem to think Japan would be. It just so happens they've gotten the group with Spain and Germany, so they might just be very, very unlucky, because otherwise in another group they could have been that team. And
Dan, of the teams that might be in decline, who could be in that maybe picture? Are Belgium one of those? Or England one of those? Or
I don't know. It depends. Are they? Going back to racing parlance again. Like, are England and France in decline, or have just been laid out for this all year? Is it
laid
that
out
sense
for Qatar?
Yeah, is it the sense
dirt track?
They're not going to turn up in green and gold, But there is that sense of we view the Nations League as very important, because it generally is for like aspirations that you would have. If you have the sort of arrogance of England and France that you're going to qualify for tournaments pretty much anyway, does it really matter if your results are that bad? Now, Southgate was nearly pushed to the brink by some of it, but they are the two obvious teams that are in decline. I know what you're saying about Belgium. The golden generation is getting older, and whether they have the transitional ability, to sort of manage it. Although you still feel like you're going to get to a knockout tournament scenario. They have exceptional players, Belgium, that can turn it on for a given game. Problem is they just tend not to back it up. But yeah, I'm like England again. If they can win their group, they have a kind enough route to potentially play one of Senegal, Qatar, or Ecuador in the round of 16. And, to get by whoever that may be if they win their group. But I think USA are like tricky. They have a couple of tricky games in there, but then they're in the quarterfinals, and then it's knockout football. So as much as I think they possibly are in a bit of decline, they've got a kind of route than some maybe better teams might have, and I could carry them a certain amount of the way.
David Meyler, what's your take on England?
I'm torn, JD. Like, after the year they've had, and I think, like, obviously once the opening game kicks off and the ball is kicked for England, they'll be singing "It's Coming Home." They'll be getting super excited. I think they'll get knocked out in the last 16.
Right.
I think they'll get through their group, and I think they'll hit a brick wall in the last 16. I think that's as far as they'll go. If they manage to get through the last 16, I eat my words, they won't get past the quarterfinal. Definitely won't.
What's the negative for England? Is it the lack of quality defenders? Is it Southgate's tactics? Is it he doesn't know his best team? Is it the shape of the team? Is it the goalkeeper? What has you setting English stock on this live radio show?
I think the problem he has is his formation. I think he has a lot of quality forward players that, like, he doesn't know how to fit the right players into the right places. I think that's one big problem he has. Like, how do you get Sterling, Kane, Foden? Like, then they need the creative spark of Maddison. Do you know what I mean? You don't just need one or two players creating. You need 3 or 4. And then who does he play in midfield? He'll play Rice and Bellingham. But, like, then there's just so many. Like, they're blessed with talented players. Like, you've got Grealish, Mason Mount. Like, how does he fit those players with the back five? Then you play the 3 centre halves. You kind of lose one I think he's almost like, let's have a clean sheet and then nick a goal, as opposed to let's go and, like, I look at England and think the players that they have, that they should be on the front foot trying to, certainly against a lot of nations they'll face, that they should be on the front foot going at them, kind of in a 4-2-4 kind of system, whether it be 4-2-2 or with wide men, or wingers coming inside. I think they have the players, and I think that's one thing that lets them down. They look to be solid, and that's why he plays the back five.
Bellingham is somebody that you'd have to think has to have a role in the team, David, don't you?
Oh, 100%. I think you've seen his performances for Dortmund in the Champions League. I like to think of a young boy, the level of maturity he plays with, his quality in and out of possession, his range of passing. Like, he likes to score. He gets up and down for 90 minutes. He seems a fantastic lad off the pitch. Like, I remember the time, obviously, when he left Birmingham, when he went to Dortmund, you'll always look at those moves at the time thinking that's an interesting one, because you're inevitably leaving home, going to Germany, a country where you don't speak the language. But he took on the challenge, and like, he flourished at Dortmund. Like, I wouldn't be surprised next summer if somebody comes and spends anywhere between 100 and 150 million on him.
Dan, we're going to have to let you go because this press conference will eventually happen. But tomorrow against Malta, would you expect changes in personnel from Stephen Kenny, freshen it up a bit?
There probably will be, John. I think there'll be a couple of changes. I'm not sure it'll be a dramatic amount, so probably like 3 or 4 maybe. But we'll learn more in due course. I mean, Evan Ferguson got a few minutes during the week, so he might get a few more. Maybe some rotation in some departments, but maybe not like sweeping ones. But as we sort of said earlier, like you can take certain things from it without it being a fixture of great magnitude.
Okay, Dan, by the next time we speak, you'll be in Qatar, so enjoy it and safe travels.
Thank you.
Dan McDonnell there from the Irish Independent. I think and Dan was saying about what are we not expecting that's going to happen. I think the heat is a big thing. I'm looking at Morocco, Croatia, 1:00 in the afternoon on Wednesday, and I'm thinking to myself, that could be one of the shocks of the group stage. I do think this is going to be a substantial factor in this World Cup.
Just looking it up there, it's 28 degrees, we'll say, forecast for sort of the next few days, so that's fairly manageable. But
and then the humidity, though.
Yeah, and obviously it's an unknown because you look at the record of like Latin American teams when they come to Europe is so bad. What are European teams going to be like? I mean, even if you look at Iran are in England and Wales's group. Like, Iran could be sort of dark horse to get out of that group, because you'd imagine that under Kyrgios they're going to be very defensive, but that they will cope with conditions. And I don't know, JD, I'm speculating here, but I imagine it's going to be hot. Even though it's November, it's going to be hot, and it probably will be a struggle for some of the European teams. It's interesting as well that this is a World Cup taking place where the players aren't like, or shouldn't be like, wildly over the top like other World Cups, where they're actually in the middle of the season, which is a kind of a strange byproduct. I'm sure FIFA put a lot of thought into that in terms of the quality of.
And also wondering about the players who maybe have not obviously admitted it or shown it, but have taken it a bit easy.
Yeah, totally. And I think,
like, I know Richarlison, for example. I think Richarlison's going to have a really big World Cup. Nobody agrees with me, but I really do think he got a minor injury. He only
came back. Seen him for like what, a month nearly.
But he only came back last week.
Yeah,
he scored 7 goals in his last 6 games. He's going to lead the line for Brazil. Nobody expects this to happen, but he's going to be he's going to start anyway. Now, he might not end up at that, but he's going to be the guy who's going to lead the line. Like, players like Van Dijk, I think, could have a big World Cup.
Messi's the one where Messi's probably been half.
Neymar has been playing really, really well.
Been playing well. Messi, yeah. I mean, Ken Early's a great piece today about like the Qatari influence extending as far as like PSG, where you've got this club paying. I mean, how much money is Mbappe on? It's like
600 grand a week, is it?
Like utterly insane. And you've these 3 players playing for PSG who are so central to the World Cup, and sort of particularly in the shape of Messi, has been in form and has probably been thinking, this is my chance to kind of crown my legacy. If it doesn't happen for Messi, that's fine, because he's probably still the best player of all time. But that's a narrative that hopefully might happen.
Okay, folks, your predictions to the World Cup, your winner, your golden boot, anything dark horse or anything surprising that you might see at this World Cup in terms of the football itself. David Meyler and Johnny Ward will be with us after 4 on Off the Ball Saturday here on News Talk on Football Saturday. Football Saturday here on News Talk. John Duggan with you 3 to 5 this evening. This is Football Saturday. Remember, Football and Off the Ball brought to you by Sky. Watch big games in the Women's Super League live on Sky Sports. You can text us 53106, tweet us at Off the Ball, listen across the country on News Talk on your radio, but also you can watch us on the digital and social channels for Periscope and Twitter at Off the Ball, YouTube, Facebook and on the OTB Sports app. Joined in studio by Johnny Ward, the broadcaster and journalist, and on the line by the former Republic of Ireland international David Meyler. 53106. Lautaro Martinez for the Golden Boot, get on, and Uruguay is a dark horse, says Michael and Kerry. Brazil or Argentina to win the World Cup, Portugal, France third and fourth, Holland to be dark horses, and Neymar to be the player of the tournament, says Nigel in Dublin. Hi, let's go Dutch. The players doing it for Van Gaal, even though the Dutch can be oddly chaotic, says Brian. Well, I don't think they will be this time. I think they've got a united squad, don't they? David Meyler, so you kind of gone through England and your scepticism of the balance of the England team. I suppose our other neighbours, Wales, where St Patrick's from. What do you think about the Welsh, David?
Wales are always a team that kind of surprise you at these tournaments, aren't they?
Yeah.
Like you look at them in Euro 16. I could see Wales getting out of the group.
Would you? Yeah, okay. Which would be an achievement for them, wouldn't it? Really?
Yeah, it's just they're similar in so many ways to like Ireland and the way we are. That they'll play and they've got a bit of star quality. They play with passion and pride. They'll get out of the group, and I think that'll be the end of their journey.
Yeah, Gareth Bale is so crucial for them. It's a funny one. He's been able to do it for Wales, even though his career is probably at like in a battery terms in your phone 5%.
Yeah, that's probably a very good way to put it, JD. But he's always come up trumps when they've needed him, and he's produced magical moments with goals. And no doubt that, like you spoke there before the break about players resting, Bale will have been one of those that will be resting up, because you know what it means to the Welsh people when they qualify for the World Cup. So this is kind of his hoorah, I imagine, for Wales, and kind of obviously playing out in LA. He's got his feet up on the beach. So I imagine it's a final dance for him. So I think he'll come up trumps in the group for them, and I think they'll get out of that, and I think he'll be the main Welsh player.
In terms of your assessment of the leading contenders, Brazil, Argentina, France, Spain, Germany, David, who do you like at the top?
I like Brazil. I like the way that I like the balance of the group. Obviously, they've got then the quality of Neymar. Vinicius is in good form for probably the last 12 months. Like, they've got the players, they've got the squad. Like, they kind of like Neymar is the diva of the group, and I think that these players have been around him for long enough that they kind of know what he's like. So I expect them to go deep into the tournament. I expect them to be thereabouts. I would love Argentina to win it. I would love Messi to win it, kind of for him just to kind of cap off those last few question marks about it. Is he the greatest of all time? That's just my opinion, but certainly if he were to win the World Cup, then he would cement that, and I don't think anyone could ever say anything ever again.
What do you think the atmosphere will be like at the games, David?
Like, have you seen those videos circulating of the Qatari people like singing like?
And they look like migrant workers as well, without trying to like say, oh, they're from here, there. They look like paid migrant workers. Yeah,
they look so staged. Like there was one video I seen it looked like Qatari people dressed in Brazil gear coming through the airport, like going, "Come on, Brazil!" Like it was a bit like.
Yeah, there's been reports, and there's kind of about
like who knows
paid fans. We don't know for certain what the situation is, but
I hope they were paid, because they were bloody well bad at it. Like, no.
And then there's reports as well about fans who were promised, compensation to come to and then they're not getting it now. It just, the whole thing is so cloudy, and you really don't know what the full facts are of the situation. But I suppose it just it feeds into the whole kind of sense that there's an artificiality about the whole bloody thing.
Just to put it in no other terms, it's just a shit show.
Yeah,
that's what it is, and excuse
the language. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, JD. But that's what it is. Like, the whole thing is just a mess. Like, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Johnny, you asked about the atmosphere. Like, even if you look at the quality, like, okay, the South Americans, some of them will be very familiar with playing in, hot climates or whatever. And then obviously you've got the humidity to deal with. I think second halves of games are going to be awful. That's kind of where I go with that. And then you look at the crowd. Like, if you've ever been at any sporting event and the sun is shining on, your side of the stadium, it's really hard to watch a game or to enjoy a game because you're baking in the heat.
Our All-Ireland hurling final, I'll tell you, I had to go into the shade.
That was a hot day. I was working here that day. That was,
There's nothing worse. There's nothing worse than when you're sitting directly in the sunlight on, like, watching a game and you're just baking and the sweat's pouring off. You can't even enjoy the game. And I think the atmosphere, there'll be a buzz around certain games. Don't get me wrong. If a certain nation draws another one, if Brazil were to play Argentina or England were to play Germany or England Wales, and there'd be a buzz with those games. But like, I think a lot of it will be flat.
Yeah, well,
I really do.
Yeah, there's tens of thousands of Mexican fans apparently have travelled to Qatar. I think from that perspective, there'll always be, and you'll have teams, you'll have fans of teams that go further in the tournament than they will expect going out there. So I actually think that'll be all right, I have to say.
Like the Middle East is, I mean, they're infatuated with football in a lot of these places. Remember, Eamon Zayed went over to play in Tehran, and he was there like 80,000 at games over there. And remember when Ireland played there in the playoffs, I think the stadium was full for like 4 hours beforehand. And some of these countries are infatuated, but particularly countries where there isn't great wealth. And the Qataris are extremely wealthy people, so like football is probably, they'll go along to the game and they'll wave the flags of whatever their adopted country is that isn't Qatar in the ground. But I don't think it's going to be particularly memorable. And the cringe of the local fans like singing "It's Coming Home" is just like, oh God.
What about France, David? A huge amount of talent. Benzema, Mbappe, Camavinga, Tchouaméni coming into the midfield now. Obviously, if Pogba and Conte are not there, they have the squad. They have a manager who believes in structure. But there's just that. Let's get the sense or feeling that it's not all happy and fluid and smooth at the French at the moment.
No, I agree with you, JD. And look, obviously the reigning champions, so they're going into this to defend their crown, and we've always seen the previous holders haven't done well the following competition. So it will be interesting. Like, on paper they have one of the best squads. They have all the players, and the players have been there, they've done it before, but it strikes me as a group of like certain individuals have massive egos, and Mbappe being the prime example. If something's not going his way, and as you said there, Deschamps is a particular type manager where he likes structure, routine. Like, he doesn't like his fullbacks going too far forward. Like, he's very much in that camp where I spoke about Southgate, where they want to have a clean sheet and we build from there because they have the players. Like, France are one that you could see going and it all clicking and being superb and going all the way to the final, or you could see them just having a nightmare. I'd like to think that with the players they have, that they should be able to progress quite deep into the tournament. But there's a lot of good nations and a lot of good sides that you just don't know. But I'd expect them to go far.
We'll also have breakout stars. You always do at a World Cup, Mbappe being the key one in the last World Cup as a 19-year-old, David. There'll be players like Jamal Musiala, Cody Gakpo of the Netherlands, Pedri maybe has already broken out as a star, Xavi of Spain. These are the players that will be looking as not only the current generation but the future generation. Anybody catching your eye in that regard? We already spoke about Jude Bellingham. Yeah,
there's like all the players you've mentioned, you're excited to watch. But I always find from different nations, like you remember Sweden had Isaac. I remember watching him, being excited about him, but I knew relatively nothing about him before the tournament. Like, at the moment, there's not many that have jumped out, bar the ones you've mentioned. Sorry, there's always 2 or 3 surprises I find. So in those regards, I'm kind of excited to watch games and kind of see what player. And then all of a sudden, like, you'll see the Premier League clubs are being linked, and that's kind of the excitement of these games, that sometimes you find a player that you didn't know a lot about who might be playing in Italy with a lesser team or something like that. You know what I mean? Or they're playing a German. Germans are always good for certain players, but it'll be interesting.
Any team that you think might disappoint that is expected to do well?
England.
Right.
I fully expect the Germans to do better than they have done.
Why is that?
Like, I don't know. I just have this feeling that they're going to have a good tournament. Like, there's not a lot of talk about them. All the talk is kind of like over the UK. It's around England, obviously. Like, people are mentioning Brazil, Argentina. Like, Germany, I just feel are always kind of ones that do well in tournaments. So I could see them potentially going on to win this. Albeit I still think Brazil are kind of my number one pick. Like, even the Netherlands, you just don't know what you're going to get.
Yeah, I think Germany might lack a striker. Timo Werner's obviously injured, and they've got a 17-year-old lad at the moment from Dortmund who's come into the squad. But look, the Gnabry's in goal-scoring form, scored a hat-trick recently. You have experience in the team. Rudiger obviously in defence. I think the key thing with a lot of these teams in the World Cup is the quality of the managers, and I think Hansi Flick is a Champions League winning manager. That'll stand to Germany, but do they have the firepower? That's the same maybe challenge that Spain will have with Luis Enrique, once again a Champions League winning manager, but do they have the striker? Is Alvaro Morata going to be the star of the World Cup from a striking point of view? Possibly not. And the Netherlands have that challenge as well, but once again Louis van Gaal has a fantastic record with the Dutch as a coach, apart actually from the campaign when we pipped them in 2001. But they have very solid defence. Virgil van Dijk, Frankie de Jong pulling the strings in the middle of the park. So you can see with the easy run that they have through Group A, unless they end up playing England in the last 16, that they could go far in the tournament. 53106, Darwin Núñez could well be a star at this World Cup, and you would have seen quite a bit of him from watching Liverpool, David. Yeah,
and Uruguay are always a team. They always seem to be in around the quarter-final and something kind of happens to them. Like, they've got, as you said, Valverde, Núñez. They've got some very good players playing with, top clubs. Núñez is one kind of, the start of the season, there was always going to be that comparison with Haaland. Like, Haaland has kind of broken records, set the Premier League alight and made it look easy. But Núñez has actually done extremely well for Liverpool, bar the sending off. His goal, contribution is like every 80 minutes, which is very good. So, like, I think a lot of Liverpool fans will be excited to watch him to see how he gets on. Of course, there's will he score enough goals? And he certainly looks like a fellow who wants to score goals. So it will be interesting to see how he gets on. He's someone I'm looking forward to because I think he will have a bright future at Liverpool.
53106, speaking of baking heat, watching a match, I once went to Sevilla Malaga, the Andalusian derby, best atmosphere I've ever been in from the home Sevilla fans, but the away Malaga supporters were sat up high in the sun and the heat. They could barely get a chant out. It was carnage, says one of our texters. Another one is not ultimately the case that Neymar lets his team down when he's the main man. I think Argentina are probably the team with the fewest flaws, and Messi winning the trophy, the only outcome that can put any sort of gloss on the competition, says Tom. I wonder, folks, if the 10,000 Mexican supporters will have a drop of tequila under the sombrero, says Dermot rather.
It is interesting though, like, it hasn't happened yet, and there has been a fair bit of, unsavoury stuff in terms of bad publicity. That I mentioned that incident with the reporter, I think he was a Dutch reporter. Who knows? It was funny watching how the Italian authorities dealt with the English fans. This was at the coming into 1990, at the end of the 80s, and they made the decision to maroon them over in the island for the group stages.
I never knew that until I watched the documentary. This is an Italian anti-documentary.
Amazing documentary.
That's worth watching, as is FIFA Uncovered, which is excellent, is on Netflix.
But, in the sense of how they're going to, if there is this influx of fans from all these various countries,
it'd be too hot to do anything.
Yeah, like, it's not in the middle of the summer. It's 28 degrees. So I mean, it's comparable to the day you were in Croke Park. Like, it's bad, but it's for over there, I'm sure they'll be able to deal with it. But Qatar probably has never experienced anything like this. It's effectively something of a police state, like all these madcap regimes over there. How are they going to deal with all these fans? I don't know. I'm sure there are going to be incidences. Anyway.
Yeah, well, I know before it all went so terribly wrong with Russia being there that everybody was so well behaved because there was a tremendous police presence and army presence there that you just wouldn't step out of line in any way. And the army and the police were escorting all the fans from the stadium in Moscow to the metro. And another point, another of our texters, Neymar, having been very privileged to see him up in the flesh, Neymar is a fantastic footballer. He's an unbelievable footballer who's in form at the right time. He knows at 30 years of age is his last chance.
Messi's 35.
Yeah, so I think that Neymar is going to have a big World Cup. Another texter says, guys, I think Cody Gakpo, this is a PSV Eindhoven player, will be one to watch given the group the Dutch are in. He's my outsider for the Golden Boot. This is another of our texters. So yeah, look, I think they're going to be surprised. I think that Belgium, I think, are going to struggle. I think they've got an aging defence. I'm looking at Vertonghen and Alderweireld are playing in the Belgian Jupiler League at the moment, you know. So I don't think De Bruyne, as well as he's playing at the moment, can carry them, especially with Hazard and Lukaku, the light of other days. Serbia are an interesting team because they've got a hero in Dragan Stojkovic, who is now their manager.
Yeah.
Mitrovic and Vlahovic up front.
Serbia are definitely an interesting.
They're in a tough group. That's probably the hardest groups to get out of. Cameroon, Switzerland, Brazil, and Serbia. Yeah,
because the Swiss and Serbia will probably be thinking, we'll be battling for second here. But like Serbia are one of the few teams here that I've actually seen in the flesh in recent years. A very good side, and Mitrovic. I don't know. I was surprised at the form. He's just absolutely on a high going over there, and I imagine like Mitrovic could have a very good World Cup. That is a fascinating group. Rigobert Song managing
Cameroon.
Cameroon. You know, it's funny the sense of nostalgia. Like I'm not going to lie. I don't watch international football all the time. I mean, and I certainly don't watch teams like Cameroon and some of these teams. To see Rigobert Song and some of the coaches, as you mentioned, Dragan Stojkovic, manager of Serbia. That's going to be a fascinating group. But I was very impressed with Serbia against Ireland. The way they passed the ball. They're a team I think that could do well.
Sergej Milinkovic-Savic, Dusan Tadic, some of the Serbian players that we might know about, never reached the last 16 of a World Cup, unlike Croatia, who reached semi-final and
relatively
final.
New nation as well, in the sense of coming out of Yugoslavia and that.
Yeah.
So like.
Switzerland got Manuel Akanji, obviously Manchester City now, Granit Xhaka of Arsenal, who's having a good season. They're a strange team, Switzerland, in that they eliminated France, as we know, on penalties at the Euros, and then they lost to Spain on spot kicks, and they beat Italy in their group to qualify for this World Cup in Italy, not making it the European champions. Eric Maxim Choupo-Moting and Brian Mbeumo of Brentford are in the Cameroon ranks. So that's Group G. Group H, Portugal. Ronaldo, David Meyler, is he just going to be the cloud over the Portugal sun?
At the moment, yes. But once the football starts, if he starts banging in goals, the interview and all of what's gone on will kind of get slowly pushed back till the end of the World Cup. But, like, what can you say about Ronaldo? Like, he needs to now go and just perform and concentrate on his football instead of doing interviews with Piers Morgan.
Like, it's almost, I've never seen anybody in life, a guy who's got 496 million Instagram followers, and by the time I've finished that sentence, probably 497. But I've never seen anybody go out, sack me, go and sack me. And even from a compensation point of view, if United have just grand to sack him, he's going to lose a lot of money out of that. Not that he needs it, but it's I suppose it's the zenith of the celebrity culture we're in now, isn't it, David Meyler?
Yeah, and like, okay, like I've not sat down and watched the full interview through. I've watched bits and pieces, and there are some valid points he makes that, in terms of, say, the infrastructure of the training ground and all that. Yeah, I get all that. Obviously, he's aggrieved by a lot of things, but then there's just so much wrong with it, like calling out ex-teammates, because they give him a little bit of criticism. Like, there's been obviously the videos of Wayne Rooney's criticism have recirculated and gone round, and thinking, geez, that's not even that bad. Like, but he's just completely thrown his toys out of the pram. He's not happy. He wants out, and he's gone on a final hoorah, and the whole thing is just a mess. The interview, the way it's conducted, like the timing of it, like there's that famous quote, wasn't it, with Sir Alex, like, no, if any player thinks they're bigger than the manager, then they'll be gone. And we've seen that with Sir Alex. Okay, Erik Ten Hag is totally different, but Ten Hag has taken him on, and the only winner out of this is Ten Hag, because it looks justified in the decisions he's made over times, albeit Ronaldo kind of claims that there's a bit of mind games going on, that he's kind of toyed with him. But this whole Ronaldo saga is just, it's grinding on my gears.
I think part of Ronaldo being, the sort of the asshole that he's clearly turning himself out to be here is part of his greatness as well. But I do wonder, JD, how did the various great managers that had the joy of having his brilliance, how did they manage it? Because
it's easier to manage it because the talent is not leaving the body, and that's why Ronaldo can't accept that, and he's raging against that.
You said that like
months ago.
Well, no, you said that. I think you said that over a year ago, maybe even. But certainly you said it last season. And no, it is true. And
can't accept it.
It's probably
there's a rage in there.
But like for him to be as good as he has been, even up until last season, is utterly astounding. So there's something in him that is part of his makeup to make him the brilliant player that he is. But there's also something in him to make him not only unable to deal with his mortalities you're talking about, but also, this is clownish behaviour. Like, why would you even think this was a good idea? Go on Piers Morgan and start giving out about sort of your ex-teammates and your management team whilst you've had a terrible season. I mean, even when you've been playing, you've just not looked the player you were at all, and brought up sob stories then like about his personal life that I thought were just like politics.
Well, he has had a tough in his personal life.
He has, but like he spoke about not being given like sort of the right sort of love for that.
No. He's been given a lot of leeway, Ronaldo. I mean, the fact that he wasn't there for the pre-season, even the fact that after the Spurs incident, when he refused to come on, he was made captain subsequently by Erik ten Hag. So I think United have bent over backwards for Ronaldo.
Totally,
and he's paid an awful lot of money. So I do think there's a tone deafness and there's a narcissism to it.
There's Piers Morgan is buddies with Donald Trump, and you can almost see like these are similar enough interviews here where these, there's narcissism.
Well, I think look, Fred Piers Morgan got the interview. That's his job. He's a journalist and he's trying to get the world exclusives, and he did that. So I don't have any issue with that.
I have no issue with Piers Morgan. I'm just saying he and Trump, like Ronaldo and Trump, there's actually similarities in the interviews. They're a little bit deluded and they're narcissists, and they've gone a long way in life.
Yeah, this is a tangent that we're definitely going on, and obviously Ronaldo, I'm sure, would disagree with that. I'm sure Trump would as well, but we're not going to be calling up Donald Trump here on the show.
The thing with JD, the thing is, like, I think the biggest thing with Ronaldo is I think Ten Hag is trying to coach the players, and I think Ronaldo can't be coached because, like, I'm not saying he can't be coached now, right? But I'm saying he understands football. Like, look, he's one of the best footballers of all time. He just wants to play. I think Ten Hag is trying to probably, like you spoke about, how did the other managers deal with them? Carlo Ancelotti is famous for being the best man manager. And then obviously it went from Carlo to Zidane. And Zidane obviously worked under Carlo, so he understands what makes Ronaldo tick.
Zidane has a presence as a person as well.
Yeah, 100%. But at the same time, like, they know you don't need to coach. Like, you don't need to coach Ronaldo. Zidane didn't need to. Like, you need to just get him on the pitch. You need him. And like the big thing, one of the big things I took, like, Ronaldo is probably the most professional footballer that's ever lived. Everyone knows that, and there's almost that part in where he has to get it out there in the interview that, like, people are questioning my professionalism. Do you know what I mean? There was that one part with him, and I was kind of like, surely no one is questioning that, and you can see that it really bothers him because he's been so professional for his entire career.
But isn't attitude and teamwork and being a team player and being a educator and a mentor to younger players and buying into it not part of your professionalism?
No, 100% I agree with you, but you don't, at the same time, you don't go to the same level. You don't get to the same level of Cristiano if you're not selfish. You have to look after number one. You have to do right by yourself. I imagine Ronaldo, for a long time throughout his career, was never worried about helping anyone. He was just focused on, what do I need to do to get myself in the best condition to play on a Saturday? Like, Rio did an interview where he spoke about at the time when Ronaldo was, obviously flying at United. He hired his own personal doctor, physio, chef, everything. And all the players were kind of lucky. I'm going to go, hold on a minute. But they thought, wow, this fella actually cares. And I think, like, there's a lot of stuff thrown at him that I don't agree with people throwing at him. But there are certain parts I fully agree. And, like, that one with professionalism, okay, there was, like, don't get me wrong, the whole thing about refusing to come on, walking out the tunnel, that's bang out of order. That's totally unacceptable. Like, even the thing of leaving at halftime in a preseason game, like he said, like, there was 8 players, but because Ronaldo was one of them, it was all made about him, which I find interesting that the other players weren't kind of brought up in the same ringer as him. But, like, then he said, like, in previous preseasons, players had done the same thing. That was never an issue, and he'd done it before. So there's a lot of things that I'd like to know more about, but certainly some of his professionalism in terms of what you're talking about, I would question, yes.
And how will that impact on Portugal? Fernando Santos, still there, who coached them in 2016 to win the European Championship. Johnny Ward, we haven't really got a sense from you who your tip for the World Cup is Have you decided yet? Have you any white smoke from the papal?
I'm not going to lie. Like I wasn't even sure when it was starting, and like maybe you'll say, "What the hell?"
Starting tomorrow at 4:00.
What the hell are you doing coming on a radio show talking about the World Cup? But yeah, like I mean,
this time next week now you'll be storming in here and you'll be going, "Oh, did you see that? Did you see this?"
Even if you look at the Irish Times supplement today,
I read it all cover to cover.
Front page is like Ken Early is effectively all about football shame. Then you go in and you've like Malachy Clerkin speaking about something else. How Qatar secured the World Cup by Gavin Cummiskey, which is about like just the horrible. So a lot of it isn't about the football.
Well, it's twin track. It's a twin track. There's a new story and there's a sports.
And
story.
then you have the cursory, all like, and you know, part of us all wants to put that wallpaper, you know, and have the tick off each game that goes along like we did in the past. Because there are, in fairness, there are amazing narratives here. The Messi aspect, Christian Eriksen. I mean, imagine if Christian Eriksen had a good World Cup and Denmark did well. The whole Ronaldo saga, England going in under such a cloud, Brazil with Neymar, Mbappe. There's so many narratives. The fact that it is the first World Cup in the Arab world. In terms of who wins it, maybe Argentina. Just looking at the run they're on and the fact that they seem to be very. I'd like a team that's strong defensively. They haven't lost in ages. They seem to have a system that allows Messi to kind of, do his stuff even at his age, and they don't kind of cough up goals. I'll be very interested. I know you fancy Brazil, JD. They seem to be favourites every year. I definitely be looking towards a team that I think will cope with the conditions, and that's kind of speculative really, because we don't know. Like, there's never been a World Cup in Qatar before. I think the likes of Serbia will do well. They're a very good side, I think. England, I have no idea what to expect. I think they may struggle with the heat as well. I don't know, to be honest, and I've never been less interested in the World Cup, and it's sad, but I
give you a week now. I'll give you a week.
Yeah, you know, I've kind of said I've lost faith in Galway United, and they were like, you'll be back at the first game, and maybe I will. Have a lot of problems at the minute on the football front. 36
game unbeaten run for Argentina. They won the Copa America in Rio, which was a huge thing, and Messi won a tournament. They hadn't won a tournament since 1993, Argentina. Before that, Lionel Scaloni, the coach, popular with the players, wasn't much of a. Like, he was only assistant, but Jogi Löw was in the similar position with Germany when he won the World Cup in 2014 after being an assistant to Jurgen Klinsmann. So Messi, 7 goals in 13 league games now for PSG this season, 4 in the Champions League, and they're going to play a 4-3-3 or 4-4-2. That's Argentina, who could end up. The fascinating thing about this is, if Denmark, who've beaten France twice in the Nations League, win that group, and Argentina win their group, it's Argentina, France, the last 16, as it was in Russia. So that could be. I think you're going to get this. You're going to get the situation where you've had it in so many World Cups in the past, where teams maybe not win the group, and then you end up having brilliant teams against each other early in the competition. Even back to 1982, when you had Brazil, Italy, and Argentina in the same group in Spain.
I think that if you're trying to like do a form study, or maybe have a cheeky fiver on something or other, it's just hard. There's so many imponderables there. It's in the middle of the season, which never happens. It's in in Qatar, in strangely hot conditions for this time of year. You've all these other things to consider. And I don't care what you say in terms of the players. A lot of them, it isn't the back of their mind, like, that this is a septic World Cup, that, you know, if they've any interest in life outside of football, they'll know that this is effectively, this World Cup has been overshadowed by every other conversation about it, which has nothing to do with football, and they know that. And I don't know what the atmosphere is going to be like at these games. I really don't. Qatar was the team. The first I ever came across Qatar was when FIFA had them as like this joke team that you picked to give yourself a bit of confidence in FIFA 94, whatever it was. Qatar was so bad you'd always beat them. The fact that I never thought they'd be having a World Cup, but here we are.
But David, on the other side, if you're a footballer, you've only got a 15-year window at best to make your mark in the beautiful game that, you know, people live in the dream to going out to Qatar. You know, there's players like like Harry Maguire, Jordan Henderson, that kind of thing. So there is a selfishness to a footballer's life that they might not get this chance again.
When you look at it, like, even as you say there, JD, you get a 15-year cycle. You might never get a World Cup. Like as you said, it comes around every 4 years. There'll be a lot of players knowing that it's their last opportunity of playing in a World Cup. It was touched on there with Neymar. He feels like it could be his last one, right? Whatever, right? Like, as much as you say there, Johnny, the players will obviously be fully aware of what's going on in Qatar, and the circumstances and the conditions. But once you kind of get to match day -1, that's when everything outside goes out the window, and it's just basically football training. That's it, and you're focused on each game, because it's an opportunity. If you're one of the top nations and you feel that, you know, do you have the squad to go and win the World Cup? They won't care about anything else that's going on outside of what's in that 26-man squad. They'll be only focused on that.
5-3-1-6 guys. Ronaldo's clearly grieving and not in the right mind at the moment. Mm-hmm. We do need to acknowledge that he's been through a very, very tough time, you know, as a human being. I'm not sure how his management have allowed him to talk to someone like Piers Morgan. This is a cry for help more than anything else. It is so sad to see. This is one of our texters, and a good point from our texter there. We're going to take a break. David Meyler and Johnny Ward here in Football Saturday on the World Cup, which starts in Qatar tomorrow with Qatar against Ecuador at 4 o'clock. One of 64 games between now and December the 18th. We're back after this.
This is News Talk.
And this is Off the Ball Saturday on News Talk until 5 with John Duggan. Football Saturday on Off the Ball, brought to you by Sky. Watch big games in the Women's Super League live on Sky Sports. Just looking through the rugby here. Scotland 31, Argentina 22. Remember, Ireland play Australia at 8 o'clock at the Viva Stadium, and a huge shock, Georgia beating Wales earlier today by 13 points to 12 in Cardiff, one of the shocks of the day. Rory McIlroy only 3 shots off John Ram now, 12 under par to Ram's 15 at the DP World Tour in Dubai with 1 round to go. And South Africa hammering Italy with a 9-try win, 63 points to 21, so they're back on the winning trail after losing to Ireland a couple of weeks ago in Dublin. That's what's going on in terms of the rest of the sport. Obviously, there's no Premier League this afternoon because the World Cup is beginning tomorrow. Max Verstappen beating Sergio Perez to the pole position of the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. And Turlestran are into the final of the Connacht Senior Football Championship semi-finals in Leinster in football this evening as well. We're joined by David Meyler, former Republic of Ireland international, and the broadcaster and journalist Johnny Ward. Johnny, just an interesting story this week about Kerry FC joining the League of Ireland. That must be a positive for the domestic game in this country in the First Division.
Finally, something good to talk about. It'll be a challenge for them, JD. They've Billy Dennehy, who would have played sort of Cork City, Shamrock Rovers and so on. He's heavily involved. There are these places around the country where football is king, and then there are pockets of sort of other sports, and I'm not sure how strong soccer is in general in Kerry, where you'd often have Shane Keegan on and he'd say like there are serious soccer players in Laois and Kilkenny and areas like that. Kerry is so football dominated. The ground Montauk Park is quite small in Tralee. It's going to be challenging, and the plan for the League of Ireland in terms of the strategic plan, which is entirely laudable, is to have a third tier. I think initially they were hoping to have it this year and or next year, and then they're talking about having it the following year. An awful lot of work involved to get a team. You see, I was watching the NFL recently, and there were some of the teams. I remember when that team was playing in a completely different city, and they can start a franchise in the US, and it seems to just take off. That doesn't work in Ireland. You have these teams that came in like Dublin City and Sporting Fingal and Kildare County and so on, like off the top of my head, that joined the League of Ireland. It just didn't work. You don't just develop fans overnight, particularly in a league that has reasonable support but is modest enough support. So Kerry is a sort of a new entity. Wouldn't have a prior history of people going to games. It does have a prior history of underage football, and for all that, I gave out to you about climate change and how you travel. We as a Go United fan base in Dublin, I'll now have the ability to almost like watch Go United in Europe by flying to a game, flying to Farn 4, and then getting a lift to Tralee, as has been suggested by a few Go United fans. It's going to be an exotic away trip, and for us First Division teams that essentially there's no Dublin club in the First Division anymore, which is amazing. All the Dublin clubs are in the Premier Division, including UCD. We don't have any games in Dublin, so we're brought around the country, and Tralee is going to be exotic, and I imagine it's going to be interesting, and I really do wish Kerry the best. It's not going to be easy. Do you bring in all local players? Do you bring in a mixture? How hard is it? How easy to attract part-time players to play in a place as far away as Tralee? It's not going to be straightforward, but I wish them the best.
Do you hear this, David Meyler? Johnny's private jet from
I didn't say private jet. This is Ryanair flight to Farn 4, to be fair. This is the closest Go United are going to get to Europe in my lifetimes. We can't even get into the Premier Division.
I'm just laughing. Will you be on somebody's helicopter, like Magner's helicopter, something down to Kerry? No, but look, it's exciting. It's developing our game back home. Obviously, Kerry. Look, you look at the success they've had. Certainly in Gaelic football, a lot of those players will have certainly been able to play football. At what level, I don't know, but There's obviously big talks of David Clifford, who played in Dublin for a long time. Like, if there's an opportunity for players in Kerry to represent Kerry, of course, their target audience will probably be Munster. They'll be looking for, players in Cork, say, in around there, players in Tipclare, something who can get down. It will be certainly fascinating, but it's exciting. I'd look at the positives in that. And if Kerry could obviously get a team and get them going and whatever, it'll certainly add a new addition to the league.
I might be overstating this, but I think Ireland is quite unique in the sense of the amount of field sports that are available to kids, boys and girls, at a very early age. I've no doubt David Clifford would be an outstanding soccer player. Like, maybe he could
be a rugby player as well.
He'd be an amazing rugby player. I mean, you saw Tyke Furlong doing the little dink with the ball himself. I think, did he play? He played Gaz well, didn't he? Like, so you've players who
Cian Lynch was a brilliant footballer.
Cian Lynch was a brilliant footballer. You had Graham Geraghty and Anthony Tohill sort of going for trials back in the day. So this is the problem. Like, I presume if you're in Kerry, and Gary O'Neill would be a bizarre anomaly for this. I can't remember why, but for Gary it was always soccer, and he's become a very good player in the League of Ireland. I think he's from Tralee, and then you have, say, the likes of Brian Cooper from Tralee, who went down the role of being a jockey, but his dad is a trainer. So there are all these potential crossovers. It's just, if you're a kid in Kerry, you're kind of born with the Gaelic football in your hand, and what's left then are lads like Gary O'Neill, but it's probably a small enough pool, so we'll see what happens.
Cork City as well, David, going under a change of ownership, we believe. Businessman Dermot Usher buying the club, who'll be in the Premier Division next season.
Yeah, and that's obviously exciting. Obviously, whenever somebody takes over a new club, there should be an injection of cash, which would be good for Colin Healy to obviously try and bring in some new players, freshen up the squad. Obviously, after their promotion, it's going to be important that they stabilise themselves in the top division. It's going to be difficult. Like, the idea that should be the plan going forward next year. Can we stabilise there? And look, it's been kind of crying out for ownership that's going to inject money. Obviously, there's the issue with Turner's Cross, the training facilities. Like, as much as Ronaldo harped on about his, mine are, like, Cork City's is still the same, like, since I was a kid, and that's things that they need. We've touched on it in this show before about the infrastructure in Ireland with facilities and whatever. And
just on that, David, I was texting one of the League of Ireland managers today, and he was like, we're on about getting jobs for young managers in England and so on. He said it's actually very hard to get a job for, I said, well, you're actually managing in a very good league here. And he said, still miles away from it being a good league. Facilities for training and stadiums are pathetic, and they absolutely are.
Well, is there a direct link, or there should be a direct dividend link? If we're hosting the European Championship matches, 7 games in Dublin, there has to be surely a direct link between the money that the economy will deliver in terms of profit and developing the football.
Like, I was thinking today, like Tallaght Stadium, Tallaght Stadium, if you put that anywhere in the developed world, that it would be just this run-of-the-mill 8,000 seater stadium. And we're so bad in Ireland. We look at Tallaght as this great stadium. It's a bang average stadium with a lot of seats. Like, there aren't that many facilities in it, but we're so impoverished over here. Like, our grounds are a joke. Like, and as you say, David, Cork City's training facility, like, I don't know, where do Cork City train?
Bishopstown.
Yeah.
Next to the dog track. Like, and I believe that land is privately owned by a developer who bought it many years ago. Like, obviously you've got access to UCC, CIT. So, like, he's sitting inevitably on a gold mine. So that plot of land would be astronomical money for Cork City to try and buy. But you look at, like, I'll never forget when like, okay, Sunderland were a Premier League team at the time, but I'll never forget when I went to Sunderland and I walked into this training ground to sign, and I was kind of going, oh my good God, what is this? Like, they have like 20 pitches, like, the facilities in the changing rooms, like the areas, like the first team have their own area, the 23s. When I first signed, it was reserves at the time, had their own area, like the 18s have their own area. Then you have like education rooms, everything. Like, it's just like, it was breathtaking. Like, and then I just think, like, okay, right, I get that. I went to Hull. Hull was an old bowls club, which was very interesting because I'd left Sunderland thinking, well, every club in the Premier League and Championship was going to be like this, Sunderland. So then when I went to Hull, it was an old bowls club, but it had 2 pitches. But it was like, it was in the middle of a housing kind of estate, but it was tucked away nicely. But they did, from the moment I signed to say when I left, like, the improvement in the facilities was unbelievable. Like it had hit the point, I think, like where it is at now, it can't go no more. They'd have to move. But like they've brought it up to a state-of-the-art condition that the pitches are perfect. They're like identical replicas of, the first team pitch, the MKM Stadium. But like I look at like Shamrock Rovers, I've no doubt have like excellent facilities to train at. But like you look at the rest of them, they're all falling behind. And that's the biggest concern. And then even like as you bring in Kerry, like how will their facilities, going to be? Like you said, they're playing in Tralee, are they?
Yeah.
Like, what's the stadium's capacity?
Oh, it's a small little ground. And even Dalymount, for example, they wanted to make Dalymount, I think it was a 6,000-seater stadium, whatever, with add-ons. And then it was like, they were quoting like 40 million or something. I was like, this is a tiny stadium, like 40 million. So the cost of doing anything...
We need some kind of joined-up municipal
We've so many issues in terms of, like, it's not straightforward, but our facilities in general are third world in a first world country.
And I also look at this, right? And obviously with these bids for the World Cup, to be a part of these bids for the World Cup, the Euros, can you imagine if we were to make the progressive steps now to build up the infrastructure of our stadiums and training facilities, that the next time a bid comes round that they actually look and go, hold on a second, the facilities are there, as opposed to like getting it and then improving them, if that makes sense?
Yeah, well, the thing about it is, like, we're going to get that Euros in 2028. We're going to host matches in this country at a European Championship, the second biggest event, some people would argue, in the world in terms of, it's actually in terms of football, if not far off the Olympics. What is the link going to be between hosting these matches and delivering money for the Exchequer and then putting that money into Irish football? And I'd love to hear what the politicians have to say about that, because surely there clearly has to be a link. Otherwise, it's beggars belief. And I suppose the kind of the tone of this football Saturday has been a bit subdued day out from the World Cup, because of what we see is the disconnect between the game we love and the people who run the sport, and obviously the FAI is a new FAI. But anyway, on that note, David Meyler, who's going to win the World Cup?
Argentina.
And that means surely that Messi will be player of the tournament. Is that correct?
Oh, he'll have a hat trick. If Argentina win it, he'll have a hat trick.
He'll have the golden boot.
Yeah, he'll take everything.
And your surprise team will be?
Netherlands.
And Johnny Ward, your World Cup winners are?
Qatar for having it in the first place. The World Cup winners, I'll go with Argentina. I mean, I don't know how much of this am I going to watch, but it'd be nice for Messi. I've so much time for Messi as a footballer. Yeah, I mean, when does it take place again?
Tomorrow at 4:00 with Qatar against Ecuador.
Don't dress sensibly and no beer at the stadium, and just behave yourself, and so on.
I'm all in on Brazil, lads. Brazil to win the World Cup, Neymar to be player of the tournament, and Richarlison to surprise everybody. Tottenham's Richarlison.
Good shout, JD.
Winner for the Golden Boot, and I tell you, he's going to surprise people, Richarlison, because he's going to start, and I don't know if he'll finish the tournament, but Brazil to win it for me. Thank you so much for listening, folks, this afternoon. Thank you, David. Mind yourself.
Thank you, Johnny. Thank you, gents.
Thank you, Johnny.
Cheers,
we'll be back tomorrow on Off the Ball here at 1:00 until 7 on News Talk. The pay-per-view, really looking forward to what's in the Sunday papers in terms of writing about this World Cup in Qatar. I'm sure there'll be a few exclusives as well. The legends that are Tommy Martin and Roy Curtis will join us for that. We're going to review Ireland's game against Australia, which kicks off at 8:00 tonight at Lansdowne Road, with Fiona Hayes and Cian Tracy. We'll also have more previews of the World Cup, Vinnie Perth and Shane Keegan looking ahead to the tournament, and all the sports news, the club championship, what's going to happen in Dubai, the final round with Rory 3 shots off the lead, and also Punchestown as well. So be sure to join us tomorrow for all the regular updates and great conversation between 1 and 7. If you missed any of the panel on the World Cup with Mark Hinsler and Mark Lawrenson, and any of Football Saturday with Dan McDonnell, Johnny Ward and David Meyler, you can find a podcast of our content on the OTB SPORTS app, or be sure to listen back wherever you get your pods if you missed any of the radio show here across the country on News Talk today. We'll speak at 1:00 tomorrow. Until then, thank you and bye-bye.